Happy Friday, everyone. Josh with Severe Weather. Appreciate you joining me here. We continue to track an area of disturbed weather over the central Atlantic, and forecasts have changed substantially. And now the storm looks like much less of a threat than it did just a day ago. So, we're going to talk about this epic failure in the forecast and what's causing it. We're also going to look at a major hurricane that could impact Hawaii next week and other areas to monitor in the coming weeks as the tropics are expected to continue to get busier after what some may consider has been a fairly quiet first half of the year. So appreciate you joining me here. We're going to do our best to stay as objective as we can with this, but I'm going to admit this has been very challenging to try to figure out what's going on. There's a lot of stuff going on in the atmosphere that makes for a challenging forecast. My aim today is to help educate you and let you know what to possibly expect and the timeline of what things are going to be potentially impacting land masses here. But beyond that, I can't really tell you what I don't know. It would just be pure speculation. So I'm going to share my screen with you. We're going to look at Zoom Earth, and you'll see Invest 91L here in the central Atlantic. We have a remnant tropical storm. It was actually a hurricane earlier that has gotten sheared apart off the Baja of California. And then Category 3 Hurricane Kiko here, which is weakened just a little bit, but still a powerful system that looks like it'll be impacting Hawaii as we get to next Tuesday and Wednesday. In the Western Pacific, we have one storm as well, Paipa, which is strengthening as it moves away from Japan. No threat to land at this point. Another area to keep an eye on just to the west of the northern Philippines and to the south of Taiwan. All in all, this is not as busy as you might expect for the peak of the hurricane season. It's been a somewhat quieter first half of the year, but that doesn't mean one storm couldn't create all kinds of problems and make it a much busier season. We see that happen many times before. So right now, looking at the Hurricane Center forecast, the area that we're watching still has a high chance of developing, according to the National Hurricane Center. Now, I'm going to objectively say this is very likely to be overdone. They are already trending the numbers down from 90% to 70%. And the risk for this development over the next 2 days is dropped to a medium chance. Could it develop still? I think that's certainly possible. Right now, we are seeing a lot less thunderstorm activity than we were a day ago, and a lot of dry air in the forefront of where this system is going. And despite the rising air that we've seen, we are still struggling to get this thing to consolidate, and it may not ever truly develop into anything past a depression or low end storm. The next name on the list is Gabrielle, but at this point, because of the lower chance of this to develop, it just makes things a lot more challenging in the longer term to find out what might actually happen if this could still be a threat to the U.S. or Central America or the Caribbean. So we're going to talk about that here over the coming minutes. I'm going to show you the satellite image where you can see what's going on. This is the Invest that we are tracking. It's actually more like a tropical wave than an actual low pressure system. And it's broken free from the monsoon trough or the intertropical convergence zone, which has gotten a lot busier in the last few days. And that is due to an area of rising air that has moved across the equator and now has landed across Eastern Pacific. It's perking things up, to say the least, but we're not seeing it go to extremes at this point in developing multiple storms. What we're seeing is more rainfall, more activity, but nothing showing any signs of organization. So that is good news for the time being. It doesn't mean we're in the clear. It just means things are probably not going to be in a rush to strengthen into anything substantial here, at least through this weekend or early next week. Elsewhere, we do have a frontal boundary that stretches from the Bahamas and Florida Keys right through the Western Atlantic. This is actually backtracked a little bit, and the Bermuda High is flexing her muscles here, keeping the weather dry in Bermuda. Where I live in Raleigh, we had some stuff try to get in last night. It never really came to fruition, and I continue my drought of 21 straight days without rain, and it's starting to get old at this point. I've heard from some of you that are watching in the Tennessee Valley and parts of the Ohio Valley, it's been 2 months since it's rained. So hopefully you're going to get some rain here today, but it may be some severe weather to come with it. Interesting to note, there is a bit of an upper level feature here, producing showers and storms, mainly over southwestern Florida and over the eastern Gulf. You'll see there's dry air getting into this on the western side, so it is unlikely to form into anything. And we have high wind shear. So while it stays pretty wet over the northwest Bahamas, it's pretty unlikely we're going to see anything tropical come from it at this point. So just some rain. Some of it, of course, is necessary. We need some rain, but it is unlikely to cause any substantial issues when it comes to storm development. We do have an upper level low here in the central Atlantic that I'm keeping an eye on, but at this point, showers and thunderstorm activity is highly disorganized. We don't have a surface low yet. It's mainly in the mid and upper levels. So we'll keep an eye on it, but that is going to drift westward here and just something to keep an eye on. And then we do have the monsoon trough affecting parts of Central and South America with showers and storms, mostly over Panama and Costa Rica at this point. And these are unlikely to develop into anything organized at this point. So that's a broader view of the tropics. Let's look at the deep tropics here. And this is where we start to see what's going on here with 91L here. You'll see yesterday we had rounds of showers and storms that blew up. And then this morning, everything has faded substantially. In fact, it continues to fade. And so as a result, the models yesterday were showing this becoming a system that would try to strengthen into a tropical storm in here, maybe hit some wind shear in here, and then have a chance to redevelop or re-strengthen somewhere near the islands. Well, today we're not seeing that clear a signal. So it continues to muddy the forecast here. So the models are really pessimistic on this thing developing at all. There's a few reasons why. You're going to see this northeasterly flow. We still have some stronger trades out of the east and northeast. That's sending cooler, more stable air down from the Azores and Canary Islands. It's also pulling in some dry air and some Saharan dust and limiting shower and thunderstorm activity. When you've got sinking air, stable air, it's tough to keep thunderstorms basically organized over a longer stretch of time. They go through pulses, but really they just have these little gusts and then they fall apart and then they try to reform. And that's not what you want to see if you want to have a tropical system. One thing I am watching, though, is that there's actually a pretty good area of shower and thunderstorm activity to the south and east of this wave. And when we take a look at the ensembles in a little bit, I'm going to show you why this signal here is actually what the ensembles are picking up on, not on 91L. So at this point, I just do not agree with this high chance of development from this invest. If there's anything that may try to develop, I think it's the next one behind it. And even that one may have an uncertain future. So unfortunately, we just don't get a lot of clarity today, and things have actually become less certain than where they were a day ago. And until something forms, you can never be truly certain. But here's a look at the infrared showing that we just have this pile of dog poo, basically, with some scattered showers and storms, but really not much else from it. You can see kind of on the southeastern side of the screen where there is more development, but that's awfully far south at this point. Here's a visible satellite image. And again, you can see these lower cloud elements coming in from the northeast. You see kind of these lower stratus clouds in here continuing over the northeastern side. And then at the mid and upper levels, you see southerly and southeasterly flow. And so these opposing wind direction, the opposing winds coming from different directions indicates there's wind shear. Even though the models say there's not wind shear, there's wind shear, but there's also a lot of dry air just in the way of this system. And so it's just very broad and sloppy at this point, unlikely to get its act together at this point. So normally this time of year, something like this would bring us more concern, but for whatever reason, we just aren't getting there this season. So here's a look at ASCAT, and this is basically satellite-derived wind data that we saw here from earlier in the day today. And you can see the disturbance, 91L, is actually up in here. There is a very broad circulation, but it looks to me more like a trough than an area of low pressure. And the reason why is that you got very light winds in here that do shift direction. But this has a tropical wave look to it where the strongest winds are well to the south and well to the north. And there's just very little convergence at this point. Now, the area behind it, believe it or not, has a little bit better area of convergence. And you actually have some wind speeds down here that the satellite picks up on that are indeed up to almost tropical storm force. But the problem is you have very light winds out of the north to the north of that feature. So if you're comparing the two, this one actually has a little more chutzpah to it than this one over here. And yet everybody's talking about this and not this one. So are we really watching the right thing is my question. And the models do tend to struggle when you've got all this disorganization until something becomes clear and becomes a front runner. There are competing factors here, and I think that's what we're dealing with today. If you look at the water vapor satellite, you can see there's a lot of dry air to the north and west of this feature. You also see not one upper level low here, but actually 3 different upper level lows and an upper level trough that extends from the third one down into here. And we've got this dry air just hitting from the west. We have some dry air coming in from the northeast. It's just not a very good environment for something like this to thrive. Now, if this dry air here begins to get filtered out, we would give this area a chance to develop. But the fact that it's moving slowly and it's got 1, 2, 3 upper lows here, kind of creating these road bumps, means it's just really got a long road to go here. So I want to leave you all with a little present here. How's that sound? This is the dry air smiling, saying, haha, gotcha. All right. I'm glad we all have a sense of humor here. If this were a serious situation, we would be a lot more serious. But the area down here, yep, we got to keep an eye on it right now. You can see there's another wave that will come off of the African coast here in a couple of days. Both of these have a chance to develop, but models are not really honing in on that likelihood at this point. So I can show you what the models are showing, but at this point, there's not a whole lot to look at. And take the GFS, and this is our most aggressive model right now, shows a very weak system, very low at latitude, by the way, actually approaching Barbados when we get to next Tuesday night, and then moving across the northern Windward Islands on Wednesday morning. Quite the opposite from Hurricane Beryl, where we had something come in this direction, but we didn't have the dry air, we didn't have the wind shear, and so Beryl went crazy here and went from a low pressure system here to a tropical storm here to a category 2 here to a category 4 and eventually a category 5. Here you see the opposite, where you've got something that may try to pulse up into something, and then eventually it just fades into the sunset here. And you just have moisture that crosses the Caribbean over the second half of next week. And then when it gets to the Western Caribbean after next weekend, we are going to probably have to watch it again. But right now, the GFS is not super keen on anything like that happening. This is quite a shift, because if you look at the model just a day ago, we really got punked here. We had a category 2 hurricane, almost the same area, by the way, a big threat here to the Windward Islands. We had a category 2 that then moved up through the Virgin Islands and then towards the Bahamas and Florida. And, it did get hit with some wind shear. If it had stayed out to sea, it probably would have been stronger, but just quite a shift. And if you look at the European model, oops, sorry about that. If you look at the European model, we don't see anything any more exciting than the GFS. In fact, it gets worse from here. You've got this area of low pressure that just kind of shears out to the north and west. There's showers and storms. And then it even avoids the Windward Islands and then the Leeward Islands and ends up to the north of the Virgin Islands here Wednesday. And we just have a very weak low pressure system already starting that recurve, not getting involved with the trough here that's going to be over the eastern United States. In fact, getting picked up by another trough that's going to lift it out. So if the European model is correct, we may have a late bloomer that becomes a tropical storm nearer to the east of Bermuda, just like we saw with Fernand about 10 or so days ago. And, it's still hovering around here. It's doing some loops, but it doesn't look like a major threat at this point. There will be more to come after this system, but right now there's nothing to really hone in on. Here's a look at our latest tropical model track guidance. I don't have the 18Z, but you can already see our tropical models here are just basically hitting the kill switch here after a few days. Some of our global models continue to bring it up westward towards the Leeward Islands at this point. I'm seeing some shift to the south, but just not a whole lot of confidence in what's going to happen here at this point. The trend has been to the south. That means a weaker system typically. And the ships model was showing a category 2. It's still showing that this could be a category 1. I expect, though, that the next model run that comes in probably after I get this video out will be weaker at this point. So it's incredible because the wind shear really isn't all that high. You can see it's 10 knots or lower. What's going on is that the air in front of this is getting drier and drier. And yesterday I totally discounted that, but today starting to believe that in fact is going to be the culprit here to keep this thing from strengthening. So having said that, and you can see this was yesterday's intensity forecast. Most of our models here were going hurricane strength, although we did have some that were already starting to tuck their tail. And today we see a lot less of that. We see, other than the ships and maybe one other reliable model, everything is tropical storm strength or less. And when this moves through the Caribbean islands, it's actually going to be in this spot here. Only the lowly ships here actually shows it getting there as a hurricane. Everything else is a lot weaker at that point. So if we look at the ensembles here, you're going to see this is 91L right here. And the European says there's absolutely nothing here to worry about at this point. Now, it does show something behind it, and that is the other feature I talked about. There are a few ensemble members that do try to develop that. Really only one or two are outliers, though, at this point. And you can see on Thursday, they do show something that could be more concerning for the Leeward Islands, but that is not the area we're talking about. That's the one behind it. And that's where I think a lot of us, if we're not looking carefully enough, can get fooled. Now, if it does gain some strength here, it's more than likely going to avoid the islands and take an Aaron-like track, as you can see here. In fact, it may actually start to curve even sooner, because what will happen is it's going to get drawn north by one of those upper level lows. That's one of those smiley faces that I showed you all a few minutes ago. Now, behind it, there could be more waves coming across, but there's just not a whole lot of support yet until we get to about the 15th. And then finally, we may have something to track out there. But again, the models aren't really that confident yet that that may even happen. But what this means is, the rising air that we're seeing will eventually get suppressed next week, and then we'll come back the week after. And around the 15th or so, things should start picking back up. So what happens after that? Well, very simply, we've got whatever may try to form here is recurving, it looks like. And for the most part, we don't see any immediate threats to anybody except maybe Bermuda. This is a non-tropical low, by the way. I did mention that upper low trying to spin something up. You can see there's a little bit of support for something here in the Western Atlantic after the 15th, and then a recurve. And then we start to see more guidance sending things westward here. Notice how the Gulf does start to pick back up here in possible action once we get after about the 15th or 16th. So even though today I've got that good news for you, a week from today, we may be changing that tune and going back to tracking more potential weather. But at this point, it's really uncertain. So that's the good news I've got for you here. Here's the GFS ensembles. Again, we are no longer seeing anything showing up on the GFS that is to be concerning, at least over the next week. There's a possibility that some of this moisture gets drawn northward. Maybe something tries to form near Bermuda, but nothing super strong. And then the system behind it maybe is worth watching more when we get to about the 18th or 19th of September. And the AI models have been doing a great job with killing these systems. They did well with Aaron. They're doing even better with this non-system. You see why. There's just a whole lot of wind shear just to the north of the system. There's dry air to the west. It's just not a very good environment to see things develop at this time. But you'll notice next weekend, we finally say goodbye to these upper level lows. They start to lift out, and we start to see an avenue open up for the most part here that is going to be more conducive to development. Now, you'll see there's still an upper level trough on the Euro here that I'm going to draw for you right here. So, whoops, I was trying to grab my pen. Here it is. There's still this trough right here. So, granted, what comes across Africa, if it tries to get in this area here, it is going to probably get killed. If it comes down in here, it may have a better shot. Again, we're just really grasping at straws to try to get something to form at this point in the season. I would say if we were to be much more concerned with action, it's actually going to be over in the Gulf and in the Western Caribbean. And we're not to that point yet, but I will show you the Western Atlantic. Here's why I'm a little bit more concerned. You're going to see this upper level trough cuts down here later next week and kind of gets stuck in the Eastern Gulf. If that trough tries to split, you can see there's an upper level anticyclone over Central America. And that typically gets your tropical Central American gyre, CAG, going, which means it gets a lot more unsettled down there. And you'll see here that the wind shear near Florida and on southward does start to lower some, especially in the Western Caribbean. So things may open up for us here, but we've probably got at least another 10 days. Again, here's the GFS. Don't blink or you'll miss it because it is killing the system and never really, you can see there actually is a very weak area of low pressure on the GFS just south of Barbados. There's not even an L there, but there is a weak area of low pressure. And then that opens up into a wave as it enters the Eastern Caribbean on Thursday. So good news, folks, at this point. But as always, we still have something out there. We still don't want to completely kill it, but I think that high risk is going to continue to drop to a low risk over the coming days. And you'll see there'll be more waves coming off after this one to keep an eye on. But this is certainly good news at this point. Now, one area I'm still concerned about is Hawaii. We do have Category 3 Hurricane Kiko out here. We also have the remains of Lorena, which just got chopped up here. Lorena's still spinning right here, but all the moisture is moving up into the southwest and into Texas. We're getting a ton of rain here over parts of Sonora. It's just really nasty there. But that is not an issue at this point. Kiko could be an issue, but you'll see there's this upper level low up in here that's expected to come down and actually turn the system a little bit more onto a northwesterly track. And we're hoping at this point that it actually curves away from Hawaii as it's coming in a little bit closer. Right now, it's a Category 3. It may try to strengthen a little bit more You can see on the last couple of frames here, the eyes clearing out. This has gone through an eye wall replacement cycle. And you can see on the visible, this maybe has a shot at trying to get back to category 4 briefly, but out ahead of it, you're going to see much cooler water by the time we get past the weekend. And so this should weaken substantially. And then when it gets back into warmer water near Hawaii, it's going to be dealing with an upper level low, which should cause some wind shear. So nothing is showing it hitting Hawaii anymore as a hurricane. We do have a system that still could go over the islands, but right now the trend is a little bit farther to the north. And you'll see that this trend continues adjusting northward. It may continue that trend. I don't have the latest here, but I would expect the model average actually goes by to the north of the islands, as you can see here on our recent models now. And that spread is beginning to tighten up as well. And you can see here on the HWRF that while we have a powerful system, it should be weakening early next week and then gaining latitude beyond that. And the HWRF says it will not directly hit Hawaii. And in fact, you're going to see the waves get kicked out to sea here. So relatively small system at this point. You'll see that weakening trend here. But that is the good news that I want to leave you with, is that things can change quickly here in the tropics. And what looked like we had a significant threat just a day ago has changed substantially. If it changes back, you're going to hear it from me first. I will make sure you're aware of that. But right now, I'm feeling a lot better about this than maybe I was a day or two ago. But as always, we still have a couple of months to go here in the hurricane season. So stay with me. If you have not yet subscribed, I encourage you to do so. If you are a subscriber, thank you so much for your support. I appreciate you and helping me get this news out to everybody else. All right, so we're going to wrap things up on a different note, and I am going to give you the word of God for the people of God, because I am a Christian, and first and foremost, and a meteorologist much lower than that. God has given me this gift, though. And Paul tells the church of Corinth in 1 Corinthians 16:13 to be on your guard, to stand firm in the faith, be courageous, and to be strong. No one was more courageous than Jesus Christ. And because of the courage that he has given his believers, by standing firm in believing what is unseen, but what is to come eternally, you have the ability to be strong and strengthened in Jesus, because he is the Son of Man. We are created to fail as human beings, but if we choose to follow Jesus, those failures go away, and we are given the option to not only follow Jesus, but given the gift of grace. And that grace is eternal life through Jesus, our Savior. So what Paul tells us here is to be on your guard. What that means is to know that the enemy is out there. There are other belief systems. There are other things that keep you between, that stand between you and God, but to stay on your guard and to follow God and to lean on him and to stand firm in your faith and not let challenges or opposing views stand in the way of that faith, to stay on guard, to be courageous, to be bold, and to be strong and convicted in your faith. And those convictions are going to help you show the doorway to other folks to heaven. And that is the word I wanted to share with you today, because that is my guiding belief. Is before I became a Christian, I was not firm in really anything other than my job, my family, my friends, what people thought of me, what I look like. And that is the road that's going to set up a failure, because you're never going to be good enough for everyone else. But God has already made you good enough. And especially if you choose to follow Jesus, you're good enough to belong eternally in heaven with him. And that's the good news I wanted to share with you today. And I appreciate you joining me here on this Friday afternoon. I hope everyone has a blessed weekend, and I'll catch up with you soon. See ya.